I lost my best friend at 41 over gambling. I've got self-control, he said, but I know how this ends. After sharing my trauma with gambling, he ghosted me. Why is it that refusing to support a vice means losing a friend? Life values mean everything, yet I'm left feeling abandoned. I am a 41-year-old Balkan man, and until last year I did not feel old at all. Now I feel emotionally and physically exhausted. I am very troubled, sad, and just lost, and I need some input, though I doubt anyone will read this. I understand that in this modern world, all life values and standards regarding what is good and what is bad have shifted. A part of growing older is feeling left behind and being unable to adapt and change with the times. Today, vices like gambling, drugs, and similar behaviors are more accepted and better understood. Understanding my point of view and life values. Unfortunately, I am just an average individual. I am not a revolutionary, nor an activist, or an exceptionally intelligent or socially gifted person who can easily adapt to social norms and changes. Nonetheless, I am more progressive than most in my country, but I draw the line at certain things, such as excessive drinking, which is harmful both to others and to the individual, drugs, gambling, cruelty to animals, and so on. These are things I cannot accept, justify, or tolerate. In the past, I could still be friends with individuals who gambled or used drugs like marijuana because that is most people's reality these days. However, I am worn out. All of these people come with burdens I no longer have the energy to bear. I was never comfortable with these behaviors, but I could at least maintain friendships as long as we agreed that I do not justify, respect, engage in, or understand those activities. We could still be friends because they had other qualities I valued in a friendship. The problem arises when someone expects me to accept and understand these behaviors, instead of respectfully agreeing to disagree on these subjects, and moving on to preserve our friendship. I am a very open person. I can discuss anything in life, from an individual's sexuality to their preferences in men or women to various life situations. I am always ready to help someone accept and understand their sexuality, ensuring they know that no sexuality is wrong, and to assist them in dealing with life issues such as being adopted, which I have experienced with a friend. I can talk to them about many issues, though I cannot be their personal therapist. I can still engage in conversation if it is within reason. What I cannot do is go through the growing up process with younger friends in their 20s. I dislike the behavior of most people in their 20s when I was that age, let alone now. I cannot revisit the same phases they experience, nor can I tolerate being convinced that the foolish things they do are normal. I do not want to be pulled down to a level of immaturity and life inexperience, where I am forced to agree with these behaviors or listen to them repeatedly making the same mistakes that young people make, all while justifying them in the same way they do. I do not want to hear them tell me the same things countless people before them have said, filled with confidence and fervor, when what they express is nothing new. I cannot assist with everything, but I can try to listen if it is within reason. However, when someone talks to me about how they got drunk and did foolish things and expects me to justify or even support them or discuss their gambling experiences, whether they won or lost, I cannot do that. I do not want to deceive them into thinking that my values have suddenly changed. Why cannot they understand that I simply disagree with that type of behavior? No, I am not fun at parties because parties have never been enjoyable for me. While I have no issue with people drinking and having a good time there, when it develops into a lifestyle, we have a problem. I can drink casually, and that is fine. Regarding gambling and drugs, I have experienced many stressful situations in life related to these two issues with others. I do not engage in any of that, including marijuana, when I refer to drugs. Due to my negative experiences with people who have succumbed to these vices, I have developed strong life values and principles that do not involve either in my life. I find it offensive when people who are aware of this continue to push me to accept, understand, or justify their gambling or drug use, even though I would have to lie to them and deceive myself to do so. And even then, I would feel terrible for having done something I firmly do not believe in. The problem. This is where my best friend of the past 2 to 3 years enters the picture. He is an incredibly talented, intelligent, grounded individual who, despite being in his 20s, I have never regarded as younger than myself. I hold him in such high regard that the thought of our age difference has never crossed my mind. We began talking online about gaming, became friends, and hang out in real life from time to time. We discuss gaming, women, movies, music, and life in general. I never once felt that I was conversing with a younger, less experienced person. I have sought his advice on many life matters more times than I can count. I have honestly and sincerely praised his maturity, intelligence, knowledge, and open-mindedness regarding art and gaming. We may disagree on things, but we also agree on more matters, creating a normal, healthy friendship dynamic until it became unhealthy. Recently, he texted me, "I know you will be upset, but I started gambling again." And he went on to explain that he does it for fun, not for money. Of course, he does not need money, he is well off. I understand that he owns his own businesses and manages money well. I realize he seeks the thrill, but that is something I cannot fully justify or understand. Seeking adrenaline, especially when harmful, is not something I can accept. I was honest with him. I felt very distressed because I was extremely disappointed when he delivered the news. I told him we could still be friends, but he should not expect me to understand, accept, or justify this behavior. I was upset because I know he had a significant gambling problem years ago, but he managed to overcome it and had not been involved with it for a long time. He proceeded to argue that I should see he is different from the typical person who engages in gambling. He claims to have more self-control, that he only gambles with small amounts of money, and that if he did not find some appeal in it, similar to the thrill of a video game, he would not be participating. Still, I struggle to comprehend these justifications. I have heard it all before. Every individual who has ever said similar things to me eventually ended up in trouble, losing money or losing themselves to gambling. He understands this, yet his inflated ego, both of us possess inflated egos in some areas, though we generally agree on most matters, does not allow him to recognize that the vice is always more powerful than the individual. Therefore, we should never underestimate vices. I conveyed all of this to him, explaining why I cannot justify these actions and cannot view them as anything but negative. I added that if it were a stranger, I would not be concerned or upset, but he means a lot to me as a friend. I have lost significant individuals to gambling, drugs, and similar issues in the past, and he knows that. I also recognize that there is a biological basis for addictions, including gambling, and my friend has already dealt with a gambling addiction in his teens. This means that even if I trust him, I understand how biology works. There is a high likelihood that at some point the urge for adrenaline and gambling will cloud his rational judgment, leading to a mistake that could cost him a substantial amount of money or worse, something even more significant at some point in life. This is why I emphasize not underestimating vices. They are often rooted in our chemistry and biology and cannot always be controlled. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to elaborate on this because he does not want to communicate further. Even so, he is upset now. He will not talk to me. We participate in the same gaming forums, yet he completely ignores me. He sought emotional support for this issue, but I could not lie to him or myself by saying that I can justify, understand, or provide emotional support for this behavior. Why cannot he simply accept that if I disagree with him about this one issue, it does not mean that I do not respect the other attributes I have always valued in him? I was very clear about all of this, yet he feels offended to the extent that he has ghosted me because I cannot support this thing I consider notoriously foolish, unnecessary, and fundamentally problematic in life. I even told him it is okay that we cannot agree on everything. He prioritized his need to gamble and to be justified in this behavior over our friendship, ceasing communication even though I have supported him in countless other matters. What kind of character and personality would I possess if I suddenly changed or pretended to change my life values, so my friend would not be upset when he informed me that he had returned to gambling, especially with real money involved? While the amounts may be small, they still matter. I did not insult him. I attempted to remain as polite as possible while being extremely upset. Yet, he is the one who is angry over gambling. Our entire friendship is at risk due to my unwillingness to accept a vice that I have witnessed time and again lead to family tragedy and trauma. I anticipated this outcome. Over the past 2 months, his behavior has become very typical for someone his age. He has grown increasingly arrogant, though not towards me, developing an attitude that people in their 20s often acquire, where they believe they know the world better than anyone else. He has also become elitist about video games, making discussions about our hobby difficult for a while, but he calmed down after we talked. Overall, I sense something like this might happen, but it still hurts tremendously. I keep losing people to drugs, gambling, and mental illness. I have always been supportive. My friend accomplishes so many great things, and I wholeheartedly support those efforts. If he engages in something I cannot condone, I simply express my view and that is it. We are different individuals. I do not end my friendships over such matters. Why is gambling so significant that I must feign support rather than openly express my concerns to the point where he would choose to ignore me, even though I have never insulted or offended him? It has been days he is active and engaged online in the same circles where I post, yet he continues to ignore me. I harbor no ill will toward him. He is my best friend, but in my family we do not engage in the silent treatment. We openly discuss matters, and we consider withholding communication a form of psychological manipulation that we avoid. Thus, to me, he is imposing a type of punishment that is more painful than my disagreement regarding gambling. I did not even suggest that we would no longer be friends. On the contrary, I simply stated that I cannot support, justify, understand, or condone this immature desire for adrenaline and gambling. I have the right to express my opinions and thoughts. He may have been offended because I referenced age. I did not use my age to belittle him. I mentioned my age in my argument to illustrate how exhausted, tired, and thoroughly drained I am from hearing the same discussions about vices. I have heard it all before. I cannot continue to pretend that this one instance, this one individual will be different. I do not know if he will be different or not, but past experiences have taught me not to be lulled into a false sense of security regarding people who speak grandly about vices. At the end of the day, even though I am disabled and perhaps not as experienced in business, social interactions, and various social and business situations, I have 20 years of life experience over him. It is neither wrong nor offensive for me to occasionally mention this, even if done in this context. I have witnessed similar situations before, lost many friends over the years to gambling, or nearly lost them. My father had a similar attitude when he was young. He made mistakes but fortunately was able to quit after incurring significant losses. My parents worked through it, but it was an experience I would have preferred not to have during my upbringing. While my childhood was generally wonderful, witnessing the damage caused by my father's gambling losses was traumatic. I had a girlfriend who could not overcome her gambling addiction either. I was unaware of her issue when we began dating, and I did everything I could to help her stop. She had borderline personality disorder, so the gambling addiction, far more severe than my friend's situation, believe me, stemmed from that. Yet she was exceptionally intelligent outside of her difficulties and was genuinely a very good person. Gambling was a significant issue in her family, based on what she told me. At that time, we had a professor in college whose husband gambled away everything in one day. It was tragic because our professor was an incredible person. She was like a mother to us. I have seen so much over the years. How does he expect me to remain silent and support this behavior when I have witnessed countless individuals fall victim to it? I had a cousin who may or may not have engaged in gambling, but he took up other habits that led him to steal money for a while. Fortunately, that behavior eventually stopped. In high school and afterward, I had friends who lost everything to gambling or went abroad to make money, only to end up unable to return due to significant losses. All of these individuals were intelligent, creative, grounded people, yet when gambling reared its head, it eventually led to their downfall. Why should he be upset with me for carrying the burden of experience and time on my shoulders, and for having witnessed so much hardship related to gambling? Story 2. Stuck in a love trap. My 42-year-old heart won't let go of my ex despite her saying, "I'm not ready for this and I'm not happy." Now I'm dating my neighbor. Can I trust myself to break free from this emotional roller coaster? TLDR, I, a 42-year-old man, cannot forget my 42-year-old ex-girlfriend after a relationship filled with emotional ups and downs that lasted almost 5 years. I understand that she is not good for me, and all rational thought suggests I should move on, but I simply cannot. I also shared this on a toxic relationships forum, but it is quite lengthy, and it is likely that few were in the mood to read my entire story. English is not my first language, so please forgive me if I sometimes lack coherence. Here we go. First, I must state that I do not hold her responsible for anything. I see myself as the antagonist. Most of the blame lies with me. My failure to understand, actively listen, believe, and consider what she communicated to me, coupled with my inability to recognize the red flags that were glaringly obvious, are mainly to blame. We are both 42 years old, both will turn 43 in August, and have a 14-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl from previous relationships. Background: 5 years ago, when we first met, I had just exited a 12-year relationship, and she had recently left a 20-year relationship. In my case, I was the one who chose to end my relationship because my ex was abusive, impulsive, violent, manipulative, overly attached, and extremely jealous. In her situation, the divorce came as a complete surprise after a disagreement on WhatsApp with her husband. 5 to 6 months later, her husband's daughter was born, the result of an affair with a colleague, and they moved into my girlfriend's former house. We connected on a dating site during a late summer and hit it off quickly from our first real date. I can confidently say that I had never felt such attraction for anyone before. It felt as though I had been searching for her since the beginning of time and had finally found my soulmate. Little did I realize at the time that she was unknowingly triggering all my insecurities, my savior complex, fear of abandonment, and my experiences from a 12-year relationship characterized by anxious attachment, while she exhibited an avoidant attachment style. The exhilaration and butterflies I felt were merely my anxiety manifesting, fueled by waves of endorphins when I was around her. Although I have never used heavy drugs, I imagine the experience would resemble the euphoria followed by depression. She explicitly told me that she was not in a good place, had not healed, and was not ready to start another relationship. But who was I to heed her words and believe them? I projected a perfect relationship and envisioned her as the perfect woman. I was eager to jump into the relationship head first. During our second date, she spent 3 days at my apartment while our children were with our ex-spouses. I would describe this time together as complete, fulfilling, perfect, and ultimately addictive, especially since we had just met and her birthday was approaching. She had plans to spend 2 days at a vacation house with friends. I liken this experience to the first drop of a roller coaster after climbing to the top. Following 3 days of love, I endured almost 2 days of silence, just a few messages from her as she was in an area with poor cell service. I felt abandoned and heartbroken. Imagine how damaged I was at that point. We shared the same custody schedule for our children, 1 week with us and 1 week with our ex-spouses. Fast forward 2 to 3 months, after a wonderful vacation by the sea, she unexpectedly informed me over the phone that she was considering ending our relationship. I felt like the sky was falling, and it took me 10 minutes to drive to her apartment, I know, and ask for her reasons. The reason turned out to be that she was beginning to love me, in her words, and that was not what she wanted. What a whirlwind. I convinced her that it was best for us to continue and see where life would take us since I was madly in love with her. This pattern continued for a while, sweet, memorable moments where I felt so loved, such as our first shared bath when she washed my hair with tenderness and sensuality, followed by difficult times marked by her depression and a lack of desire for anything or anyone, accompanied by reminders of how her ex had ended their future together. Then COVID hit and I became infected. She recovered in 3 days, it took me 2 weeks. During the lockdown, like everyone else, I was confined to my apartment, spending Christmas alone. It was at this point that I began online psychotherapy as I hit a new low. This experience opened my eyes. The psychologist pointed out that I was trapped in this relationship and that my addiction to it was similar to substance abuse. We had multiple sessions where I came to understand my childhood fears and events that shaped some of my behaviors. I always approached situations logically, based on arguments, and the psychologist advised me to create a list of pros and cons regarding the relationship. There was no comparison. After assessing the situation, it was clear that any rational person would view it as more painful than fulfilling. Nonetheless, I was never able to follow a rational path. Long story short, over the years, we experienced 2 or 3 breakups initiated by her because I was not what she desired. She compared me to her ex-husband who cheated. He earned more money, was more cunning, and was able to give her multiple orgasms, whereas I rarely managed to give her even one despite my best efforts. Our sexual encounters were typically 30 minutes long, excluding foreplay, which she seemed to find inadequate. Additionally, she was never interested in oral sex. Throughout our relationship, I was permitted to perform oral sex on her only 5 or 6 times. While she did so for me a few times, I was her first. However, this created a significant psychological barrier for her. My deep affection for her and the desire to make her happy left me feeling frustrated, even prompting me to secretly take erectile dysfunction pills to extend the duration of our encounters. By the way, I have an average size and duration. Women in my previous relationships regularly experienced orgasms. This issue led me to try and compensate in other ways. I was consistently very caring, perhaps overly so, as she reminded me I was not her father. Lavish gifts, flowers for all occasions, and paying for vacations while covering all outings, surprise city breaks, and other activities. However, these gestures were not sufficient, and my negative habits seemed to outweigh my positive actions. I often forgot things. Focusing on multiple topics at once is challenging for me. For instance, if I am driving, there's a chance I will not concentrate on what you're saying, and I may forget your response and repeat the same question later that same day. I know it must be annoying. I also struggled with generosity. It seems that presents and vacations were not enough, as she sometimes expected me to pay for her car maintenance, despite me taking care of her car during checkups, or to cover her shopping expenses, reminding me she was unaware of the costs of food and maintenance while she was married. I told her that I would take on those responsibilities if we married and lived together, but since that was not the case, I felt it was unreasonable. By the way, I proactively suggested several times. Well, I was the one mostly suggesting that we move in together into a larger apartment with our children. She had 3 conditions. 1, it had to be in the same neighborhood so her daughter could be close to her friends. 2, the apartment needed to be new or recently refurbished since she dislikes moving in and having to renovate afterward. And 3, I was to cover all costs. I agreed and was working toward that goal. Another point of contention was my parenting. I do not properly educate my son according to her standards. However, I never accepted this criticism, as I spend ample time with him, we talk frequently, I cook healthy meals for him, and everyone else who knows me says I am a good father, everyone but her. But there is always room for improvement, right? By the way, during our vacations with the children, which we had a few, she always slept with her daughter while I slept with my son. We were only intimate enough to share a kiss here and there. I admit that my son is not fond of her. I can partially place the blame on her for this, and I will not force him to love her, but he has always tolerated and respected her. I even had a few arguments with him regarding this, which I now regret. Additionally, she is not a deep sleeper, and I snore at times, though not loudly. It is enough to disturb her sleep if she wakes up at night. I tried various methods, such as staying awake longer, sleeping face down, and using a mouth device that caused soreness in my teeth. Most nights, I ended up sleeping on the couch. What ultimately worked was earplugs for her, but she was unhappy with that solution as she experienced ear pain at one point. In any case, we did not share a bed every night. Keep in mind, we never moved in together. At best, we would sleep together for 1 week while alternating weeks with our children in each of our apartments. Regarding her, I love her primarily for how I feel when I am with her. She has the most beautiful smile, is intelligent, and exudes tranquility, which I adore. Even during our arguments, we remained calm. She is a brunette, petite. I am also short, which makes me feel more masculine, and has a beautifully proportioned body. However, on the downside, she has a tendency to focus on the negative aspects of others, holds traditional views, believing the man should be the provider and responsible for her happiness, is not very open in bed, and is exceedingly demanding and hard to please. You might ask, what does she offer? I am not certain. She has her own job, car, and apartment, but I would be happy if she could simply offer me her love. Additionally, she is sometimes avoidant, and I have always resented her for this. She becomes incredibly cold, and even her facial expression changes. It is as if I am looking at a completely different person. Where do we stand now? We have been separated since the beginning of the year. It was her decision. She told me she was unhappy in our relationship, had tried for several years, and that I had changed over time. I honestly believe I have changed for the better, especially for my own well-being. Accepting this has been extremely difficult for me. I still do not believe I have fully processed it. During this time, we still communicated, and we even engaged in sexual relations a few times as friends. However, I finally found the courage to tell her that I could not continue this way, as it caused me immense pain and reminded me of our early days together. Nonetheless, we have spoken a few times as we had some things to settle. In the meantime, during these months, I began conversing with one of my neighbors across the street, a 38-year-old divorced woman with a 7-year-old son. Well, it has evolved into more than casual conversation. We spent several nights together and are planning a short vacation next month, just the two of us. She is very intelligent, attractive, and quite interested in me. It has been a while since I felt taken care of, and it's been a while since a woman has taken the initiative. I am not accustomed to this, and I am uncertain about how to feel. Notably, I do not wake her up with my snoring, and I always ensure she has multiple orgasms. However, if I may draw a comparison, I feel as though I am like my ex-girlfriend at the beginning of our relationship, and this new woman is reminiscent of who I was at the start of that previous relationship. God, I hope I am mistaken, as my ex and I share many similarities. I know I am not healed, but I wish at least once in my life to make a rational, logical decision instead of sabotaging everything by fixating on my ex. I do not feel a profound attraction to her, but I hope that feelings will develop and I will be able to open my heart, as at least on paper she embodies everything I desire and need. This brings me to my dilemma-seeking advice. I still feel guilty, as if I am cheating on both my ex and this new woman. I think about my ex every day. I am not fully healed and still struggle to open up. I have communicated this to my new girlfriend, but I want to give this new relationship a chance, as I sense she is so different and logic suggests that she is what I truly need. I understand the psychological mechanisms and traps, but I still find it incredibly challenging to remain rational. My ex is a good woman, but she is toxic for my well-being. How can I finally let go? Story 3. My best friend disappears for months and leaves me heartbroken while I'm struggling with family illness. I can't keep getting hurt again, I said, but still find myself longing for her smile. Should I end this friendship before I become the lesson she learns the hard way? I need an outside perspective on this entire situation, not from a friend's viewpoint. I want it from someone I do not know. If you are someone who knows me, please take everything you read here and keep it confidential. To provide some quick background information, I relocated to the country I am currently living in approximately 3 years ago. I had to leave almost everything to come here to this Muslim country. I am from a Latino country, so the culture shock was overwhelming. The level of education in schools here is significantly more advanced than what I experienced in my home country. Attending school felt like I was in university back home. As I previously mentioned, I moved to a new country and had no friends. The connection between my friends and me from my home country deteriorated, we barely talk, and it is a miracle we even communicate occasionally. Additionally, when I relocated here, I moved in the middle of COVID-19 and was at the peak of my depression. I had just ended a relationship shortly before coming to this country. At the school I enrolled in, I met my current best friend. When I refer to her as my best friend, I mean that she is the only person I consider as such. I only have one best friend, others may be my friends or close friends, but only one person holds the title of my best friend. I have been best friends with her for about the same duration that I have lived in this new country. She and I are extremely close. She also considers me her best friend. We used to note the phrase, used to talk every day either in person or online. Most days we were on calls for hours, went to hangouts with friends, and I would sometimes surprise her with visits, like showing up at her house at 10 p.m., which is significant because her parents are very protective and have issues with her hanging out with boys unless another girl accompanies them. My being at her house is a substantial step above that, and amusingly they do not mind too much because they have met me several times. Even all her siblings know me, and some of her sisters get excited when I visit. My family is familiar with her as well, and she even met my grandparents when they came to visit me in this country. We are so alike that some people, including ourselves, say we are just gender-bent versions of each other. To be blunt about how I feel regarding her, this is relevant to the entire situation. I love this girl, but not in the conventional sense. I love her as a friend, as my best friend, as someone who has supported me through her highs and lows. I love her platonically, but I also cherish her romantically, not in a physical sense, but in a more vanilla, normal manner. Out of all the best friends I have ever had, she is the first one for whom I have cared this deeply, and I believe that contributes to my romantic feelings. I have never met anyone as amazing and as great a friend, so I just do not want to share her with anyone else. Thus, in a way, the best way to secure that is to be with her. I cannot easily explain the complexity of my feelings, but I like her a lot. I like being her best friend. Even when she had a boyfriend for a few months, I still loved her as a friend and was genuinely happy for her happiness, at least until the relationship turned out to be less than great. She's the only friend to whom I have bought the most gifts, and I love her dearly. I would even marry her. However, as we both agreed, we prioritize being best friends, and I am okay with that. Would I like her to be my girlfriend? Yes, but I also genuinely enjoy being her best friend. However, it does complicate matters that almost everything she looks for in a potential partner aligns with traits I possess to some degree. A significant event occurred after I had to transfer schools. Everything remained constant until she moved back to her home country about halfway through my time at the new school. Although that was an adjustment, we communicated frequently and set up a schedule to accommodate time zone differences. However, she eventually stopped responding. I would text her, and she would not reply. This silence continued for nearly a full month until she returned and explained that she had been feeling unwell and had secluded herself. For context, this was not the first instance of such behavior. She had previously done something similar, but only for about a week. Whenever she feels overwhelmed or stressed, she tends to withdraw and cut off communication. The key difference is that before, she would at least keep in touch with me slightly. She had been overwhelmed with starting university and struggling to make friends, so I understood why she had disappeared. After a few months, she came back to the country, we reunited, and I even surprised her with a late-night visit, bringing McDonald's to eat outside her house. Those small hangouts with just the two of us remain some of my favorite memories. Eventually, she would return to her home country to continue her studies. She eventually made new friends, but that is when our relationship began to decline. After she made new friends and reconciled with an old acquaintance, our communication deteriorated. She talked to me less and less, our calls dwindled, and we played fewer games together since she spent more time with her new friends and that old acquaintance. While I was happy for her, it was disappointing that we were spending less and less time together, eventually leading to almost no communication. Then came a time when I truly needed her. I was under immense stress and dealing with serious problems, and I had a complete breakdown and anxiety attack. She was not there for me, unlike how I had been there for her during difficult moments. When she finally returned, everything was old news. Eventually, my depression spiked, causing me to engage in some reckless behavior, and again, she was largely absent. However, this time she came back shortly after that, asking if I was all right. My tendency to hide my feelings made me lie and tell her I was fine, as I did not want to burden her. She pressed the subject once more, but after I insisted I was fine, she accepted that on some level. Now, when I am struggling, I usually leave some clues for my friends. I have also told her that if I'm in a bad place, she should push me to open up because I have difficulty asking for help. However, she did not press hard, and as time went by, she apologized for disappearing and not being there for me. I assured her it was fine since I was partly at fault for not being honest. When she returned to the country, I went all out with her goodbye present, crafting her a handwritten letter with drawings, since we are both artists, and creating a flower from plastic spoons with a green base that turns green when lit underneath, complete with white accents and black details. Suffice it to say, she appreciated it, and I also gave her a ring during another hangout. While she wears many rings, I cannot deny that I harbored romantic thoughts when gifting her that ring. After her return to her home country, we faced round 3 of her withdrawing from me, primarily due to that old friend I mentioned. He essentially used her as his therapist and had feelings for her, while she had made it clear she felt nothing for him. Being a people pleaser, she spent much of her time with him despite knowing their friendship was toxic. During that time, she began talking and venting to me again, but it was short-lived. After she ultimately ended things with him, she found a new group of friends, and from there I completely lost her. We seldom communicate, and when we do, it tends to be brief. Only a few weeks ago did we start talking more frequently, which brings me to the reason for this post. A few weeks ago, I learned that my grandmother has cancer again, but this time it is terminal and she has limited time left at minimum. She has about 4 years, but due to the nature of her cancer, it could be less. It is also a painful type of cancer, so understandably, I broke down and needed my best friend for emotional support. Considering we had been communicating again, I thought she would be there for me, but she was not. However, she returned about 2 days after I received the news. During that time, I noticed she was with her grandmother who had only passed away a year prior. From her stories, she was clearly struggling, so I chose to hide my pain and not share my troubles with her, especially since she was going through her challenges. Even after about a week following my difficult news, I did not want to confide in her, even though she pushed for more information. She only managed to ask, "Are you okay?" twice before disappearing once more. After I worked through my issues, I realized why she had vanished again. It was because she was spending time with her friends from her grandmother's house. While I am genuinely happy she has friends, it has been nearly a year now, and 90% of that time I have been on the sidelines watching my best friend post almost daily about her hangouts with her friends, while I, her so-called best friend, felt sidelined. To put it bluntly, I am exhausted and I need a stable friendship. I need someone to be there for me when it matters and to communicate often, not every day but at least fairly regularly. I do not know what to do anymore. I do not want to continue getting hurt and disappointed by my best friend whom I love dearly. I understand she does not do this intentionally, it is simply her nature. However, even when she realizes what she is doing, she tends to become anxious and does not know how to reinitiate conversation with me, despite my continual efforts to assure her that she does not need to worry about any of that with me. Yet, it appears that this reassurance is not enough. I love her, I love being her best friend, and I cherish that beautiful smile of hers that makes my heart flutter. However, I cannot continue this way if I am going to be hurt and disappointed repeatedly. I do not want this to end, but I am unsure of what to do. I realize that if we have another lengthy discussion like in the past, things might be okay for a period, but eventually she will slip back into her old habits. From what I understand, she has never truly experienced losing a good friend due to her mistakes, and such experiences teach the importance of maintaining contact and ensuring friends are okay. I fear I may become that experience for her, but I do not want to be. However, given the current situation, that might be the case. The worst part is that just yesterday, she vented her feelings on her story instead of discussing them with someone, and it frustrates me. I want to help her. There are aspects where I know I can provide support, but right now, feeling as I do not think I should do that, which is disheartening. It leads me to contemplate ending our friendship just when she needs someone the most. Yet, I am simply tired of enduring hurt again and again. If you made it this far, thank you for reading. I apologize for my rambling, I just do not know how to articulate everything properly. I have cried, felt anger, and experienced all emotions for her, but still, I am unsure of what my next steps should be. Thank you for taking the time to read my lengthy story. Goodbye. Story 4. I was just 15 when Adrian, a 22-year-old YouTuber's brother, slowly groomed me in the shadows of Discord. "You're too mature for your age," he'd say as he crossed lines I couldn't see. Now at 23, I realized the chilling truth. I was never his girlfriend, just a victim. I will not share the name of the YouTuber in this post to at least maintain some animosity. However, I will reveal the groomer's name. His name is Adrian. I previously discussed him on Twitter after someone messaged me on Discord asking about him. They informed me that some allegations have emerged indicating that he had groomed another girl. They inquired if I knew who the Discord user he allegedly groomed was, and I responded affirmatively since I had spoken to her when I first met Adrian. They were already friends and communicating regularly before I met him. Therefore, I genuinely believe her because if he was capable of doing it to me, then he is certainly capable of doing it to her. Thanks to that Discord direct message, I went to Twitter and spoke with an ex-admin who helped run the server, and I sent him all the evidence I had against Adrian. He made a Twitter post, which I retweeted, and I composed several tweets discussing it. I am bringing it up here because I eventually deleted those tweets when my real-life friends began following my Twitter account. I could not bear the thought of them discovering that I was groomed, especially during high school when I met them. Additionally, this feels incredibly relieving to write out. It is very therapeutic. In any case, the story of my grooming begins in the summer of 2018. I was about to turn 16 when I first communicated with him. Keep in mind he is 6 years older than I am, so he was 22 at that time. I was quite active on the YouTuber's Discord server, and Adrian served as an admin. He would pull me into calls that were intended for individuals with a higher rank in terms of experience points earned from sending messages. He ultimately decided to give me a higher rank instead of going through the trouble. We started talking frequently. Our communication began in a group chat we created with other Discord friends, and we would play Roblox together. After a while I was in school, we would direct message consistently through Snapchat. I grew increasingly dependent on his attention. I also experienced feelings of jealousy whenever other friends were speaking to him alone, and to summarize, I developed a significant crush on him. The issue was that I often forgot how old he was because he acted just like us. All the people in our Discord group were girls who were around 1 to 3 years younger than I was. During my junior year and the summer afterward, our friendship continued to grow. By the time I entered my senior year, he began flirting with me. I was still 16 when I started. He would flirt with me consistently, so naturally I was completely infatuated with him. He would also say the classic line, "You are so mature for your age," which was nonsense. I was never mature at that age. Looking back, it was quite apparent. In October, he finally confessed his feelings for me. At this point, I was 17 for 2 months, and he told me that he confessed his feelings because he could not wait until I was 18. He just had to tell me. We engaged in an online relationship, a term that some may find embarrassing, but nonetheless for a week. I remember vividly that this 23-year-old man asked me if I was today's date because I was a 10 out of 10. Regardless, it only lasted a week because our dynamic did not change. We were simply more open about our flirting. After that, it resumed to the usual communication, but it became slightly less flirty until December of that year, 2019, when he got drunk and called me to declare that he was in love with me and that he had not stopped thinking about me. I always disliked it when he got tipsy or drunk because he would call me, and it made me uncomfortable. We engaged in an online relationship again from the end of December to around January 7th. I know the date because I was on a family trip and my mother discovered him. However, I lied to her and said he was a guy from my high school. He panicked, understandably, as he was committing a crime and told me we could not date anymore. Some time passed and then COVID-19 hit. He enjoyed going to clubs a lot, so when COVID-19 shut everything down, he found himself stuck at home, meaning he essentially had no one to talk to. He then asked me if we could date again. Being the oblivious and infatuated girl that I was, I said yes. This is where the grooming became very severe. I do not recall the exact month when the intense incidents occurred because my memory has become somewhat hazy from that time. I somewhat blocked it out. However, I know there was a moment when we began engaging in more sexual activities. It ultimately became a daily occurrence where he would expose himself to me, and I, a minor, would do the same. I remember a detail about his body that no one could convince me was false. He has a birthmark at the base of his penis on the underside. I cannot remember which side because I do not know if the camera flips the image or not. I know it was on the right side of my screen. Anyway, he started attempting to isolate me, and my relationship with my parents significantly deteriorated. I desperately wanted to go to college and leave, and my parents were on the verge of just kicking me out. Since I was still a child, they would take my phone away whenever I misbehaved, which happened frequently during this period, and Adrian would get angry with me, blaming me for not being able to communicate with him. He would say he could not continue like this as he could not have a girlfriend who could not talk to him, and so on. As a result, I began to harbor resentment toward my parents. Eventually, I got to college and things became interesting. I was still 17 when I arrived at college, and I turned 18 a week after I started. I am not exaggerating when I say this. He genuinely broke up with me and ceased communication because I was in college. He claimed that I had more important things to do and he could not have one-on-one conversations with me anymore. This makes sense as I had a roommate, but isn't that somewhat suspicious? He also visited me on Labor Day weekend, which was about 2 weeks after I turned 18, and he attempted to have sexual intercourse with me, but I was on my period, so I declined. I was also seeing another guy at this time, and I was not a virgin, but I never disclosed that to Adrian. He was extremely insistent that I engage in activities with him. So I performed oral sex on him, and he was very pleased that he was my first, which he was not. Eventually, he left, and we hardly communicated for a while until late September, early October, when he inquired if I wanted to go to Las Vegas with him. At this point, I was becoming more interested in the guy I was seeing and expressed that to Adrian. He told me he was also seeing someone, so he wondered why it was an issue since neither of our partners needed to know. This revelation made me realize he did not care about me. Out of curiosity, I agreed to the invitation, and he specifically asked me for dates when I would not be on my period. At this stage, I was certain he just wanted me for sex. I told him I was unsure, and he became irate, demanding that I inform him as soon as possible. I later developed a urinary tract infection, which disrupted my cycle even more, and he became extremely angry, accusing me of having a sexually transmitted disease and being foolish. Like, seriously. After that, I ceased communication with him entirely. When I completed my first semester, he messaged me asking if I wanted to talk and catch up. I declined, stating that I was busy, and I never spoke to him again. I am currently 23 years old, and I can assure you all that I could never perceive a 16 or 17-year-old in a romantic or sexual context. He is a despicable person, and I sincerely hope that he is no longer associated with that YouTuber's career.